Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we thank you for joining us here on this program that gives you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's where we are now. This is our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then we come your way Monday through Friday at from 8 to 9 a.m., following the news, streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. We hope that you'll subscribe and click notifications so that when I post a new conversation, you will be notified and you'll be able to tune in and listen in and gather. And to that end, I want to address someone who sent me a comment. And first of all, let me say thank you for commenting on one of the programs, one of the podcasts that we posted. I know that you're probably listening, and I'll be sharing this and this shout out as well. I don't have the person's name off the top of my head, but I want to thank you for your comment. And I will share with our listeners and viewers that the comment had to do with asking me to let the guest talk more. And I have stated on this program in many different interviews, I know already that I tend to talk an awful lot in these programs. And I am doing my utmost to allow the guest to hopefully have at least 51% or more of the time. So I appreciate that information, that observation. It is not lost on me. I do understand it, and I'm going to continue to work on that. So I just wanted to say a shout out to that particular individual who made a comment about one of the interviews that I did with a woman last week. And again, I appreciate all the comments, the encouragement and the observations, as well as the compliments as well. So thank you for doing that. We ask that if you can support the work we're doing financially, we have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. We have an email address that we ask that you put in when they ask you, to whom are you sending this support? Richard@richarddugan.com. And then, especially in light of the conversation we're going to have today with our very special guest on this series of programs, Lumari, we ask that you take some time to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm place and spend some time listening to that still, small voice. And with all of that, we welcome you back to our session as we continue talking about the Akashic Records. This is a book that is available through, of course, Lumari.com as well as on Amazon. Lumari, thank you for joining us again as we continue our journey to discover what the Akashic Records are all about.
Well, thank you. Oh, Richard, I'm so glad to be here, and blessings to all the listeners who are here in the moment and in the future.
Absolutely. Well, just to give you folks sort of a heads up as we begin here, Lumari is a gifted, internationally acclaimed intuitive life coach, a creation catalyst, a conscious channel, and vibrational activator who has guided thousands of people worldwide to awaken and live their highest soul. Lumari serves as that catalyst and guide and inspiration for people and planetary transformation, evolution, and awakening. And she fuses her many spiritual gifts. She channels the highest vibrations, Akashic knowing, clear vision, psychic and practical wisdom, and guiding you and the community to continue to reach new heights of awakening, to align with your higher soul calling, live lives of fulfillment, joy, creativity, success, and make a positive difference in our world. And to that end, she shares with us many books, but also a free gift I want to mention now at lumari.com/sacred space. It's a personal sacred space meditation that helps you feel clear and whole, connected to your deeper self, and in touch with your own energy, vision, and purpose. But she also adds to that the books that she has written, and we started out with our first series at the beginning of 2024 with Streams of Consciousness. It's how to discover the 12 hidden frequencies of creation, activate your higher calling, and uplift our world, as well as Alawashka. It's the original language and vibrational source of creation. Living Inspired with Lumari, which engages the lights of awakening, revelation, and transformation, or the acronym ART. And of course, the Akashic Records, collective keepers of divine expression. And of course, today we continue on with divine exploration and we can discover the vastness of the Akashic Records. It encompasses wisdom and information about total consciousness, individual lives, diverse life forms, civilizations, and their evolutionary journeys throughout the universe. The divine wisdom of the records can provide insight and a greater understanding of life and existence. And I have to tell you, Lumari, as I was reading through this chapter, it happens to be chapter 4, or 5 actually, chapter 5 in the book, Divine Exploration, I got into this to the degree that the collective that brings this information forth through you in the book, Akashic Records, starts talking about other than earthlings. In addition to the forms that exist on planet Earth, it starts talking about other civilizations in the universe.
Isn't that fun?
It actually is. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If the mothership shows up, please take me along. I'd like to experience that. But then again, I also know that we have lots of work to do here. So I'm willing to stay for the duration if that's necessary.
Well, you can take a journey. That doesn't, just because you take a journey doesn't mean you're not coming back.
Well, that's the idea.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's multidimensional too. So a lot of times in our conversations of things, we think like a 3D human.
Mm-hmm.
So we think, okay, it has a physical form, it looks like this, it thinks like this, et cetera, et cetera. We have all the criteria of how we are, and we look at other beings that would be like us in this particular form. Now, there are other beings that are like us, that have a physical form, they exist in their own reality. Eventually, either you will already know this because you've read enough and known enough about the time travel, other beings, et cetera, that are on this planet or have been or started it or however the stories go. And there's also consciousness that isn't limited to 3D. It's not limited to what we know about physicality, life, and reality. And a lot of times we get stuck in that. So one thing, I totally appreciate our humanity, our 3D world, the beautiful things that this goddess planet does for us. Absolutely. And she may have a higher consciousness that we know nothing about, and she may access information and wisdom and ways of doing things that we have no access to because we don't understand it. And we may have access to other dimensions where we can receive guidance and energy. And there is, I'll just say, very, 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 very likely that other beings exist in higher levels of consciousness that may or may not need a physical body.
Now that's interesting, because that's all, like you just started out saying, we think in the 3D material construct. And
Yes.
and there, it's funny because what just flashed through my mind was the phrase carbon-based beings, and I'm going, okay, that's one element. Okay, that's one element in the universe, carbon.
Yep.
And Earth is sort of based upon primarily a carbon-based existence. But who's to say there isn't silicone or radium or any of the other elements in the periodic table, or elements that don't even exist because in the periodic table, because they don't exist in this 3D world.
Exactly. And when we look at it, so another way of just having the conversation about it, right, is that when we think of the divine, whatever word you use for that, right, we, for the most part, we don't think of a 3D being. For the most part. I know some people have, a line with the story of a being who was here and then moved on to the other worlds, and now it lives in those worlds and helps people. But the thing is, that divine one is not limited or existing upon our 3D Earth. So if that being isn't, and certainly everybody who has conversations about angels, they're not limited to a 3D body. So how many other beings and consciousnesses and creation forms that we wouldn't even understand at this point are part of the universal all?
What is so fascinating when you talk about these other beings, be they angels or otherwise, my imagination went to many of the images that we have created of these beings, such as angels who have wings.
Right.
When in fact they may...
How could they fly without them, right?
Well, I see, that's from our limited perspective. You're absolutely right. But maybe they don't have bodies because they don't need them.
No, and maybe they reflect that body so that somebody can understand their existence.
Yes.
See a higher being, right, and we'll say, I'll just say this for everybody, a higher being that's really positive, focused, etc., right? Now that being is going to kind of know about humanity, right? Going to know that we have certain conscious limitations on what we can think and what we see and all that jazz. So most likely, to make sure that we could have a beautiful connection and maybe conversation or maybe awareness, they might project a body that's relatively physical so that you can understand, oh, okay, well, it's not like a human sitting on my couch with me. This is an angel, but I can see it because it has this, and this. So it's actually recognizing the conscious limitations that many humans have and projecting something so that you can get the divine messages without freaking out.
Yeah. Now, the collective keepers.
Yes.
Of what you know of them, and I'm assuming it is a plural.
Yeah. Oh yes, it's a plural.
They have no body, or do they have physical bodies?
No, they have no body.
Okay.
It's for them. Now they're fascinated with all of these things. That's the one thing about the keepers that I want everybody to understand. They are fascinated with everything that's happening in the universe and all the different levels of what's happening. And they're fascinated with what may happen what new things are coming along, because it's not stagnant. It's in creation, which means it keeps on moving, changing, growing. For them, having a physical body or even a vibrationally constructed body, meaning it's not really physical, but it would look like it if you met them.
Right.
Okay? It doesn't interest them. That is like, it's kind of like they're thinking, why would I do that? This has no interest at all. Because they're interested in the whole universe. They're not going to put on a suit just to meet you.
Right. And there are other ways of communicating, and what comes to mind, of course, under these circumstances is telepathy, or through our intuition.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just one way.
Well, exactly. So the thing that is really important in us knowing is, like you say, you go into your silent space and you listen, right? I mean, you tell everybody that while they're listening to our conversation. And there's so much more there than we ever truly can know. That's why there isn't just one being in the Akashic. There's many keepers, because one being couldn't hold it all either. Even though they confer with each other and share new things in their conversation, and their capacity to understand is beyond monumental. But for us, we're not trained to listen to our own self, to the messages we receive, to any of those things. We're not trained. Actually, we're trained against it.
Well, the thing that I also, in this chapter, was looking at was the concept, and of course the word that's used, the concept of the different forms of government. And when it got past those that we all know of, or at least we like to spout off about, they began to describe what I am aware of that actually it does exist within a particular philosophy here on this planet. Now, it probably existed prior to the establishment of this particular philosophy, and I'm speaking, of course, of the prior being the Native Americans and the way in which they governed themselves, and that our country's government has sort of borrowed bits and pieces from. But the one philosophy that I'm thinking of in present day that's only been around for not quite 200 years, the Baha'i faith, of which I was a member back in the 1990s. And they have, and this was almost, I don't want to say it was verbatim necessarily, but it's certainly, as I'm reading about this, they have these different councils, not only in the cities and the state and the country, but also internationally. And it's made up of 9 members of the faith at all those different levels. Okay?
Right.
And they get together and somebody comes in and says, I have a situation. And they share what the situation is. And then this individual is told, okay, leave this with us. We'll discuss. We'll see what we can do to come up with a resolution for you, a solution. And the interesting process is, first of all, to become a member of the body of 9, these different councils, you are elected. However, it's a whole different kind of election. You don't campaign. Well, actually, you do, but you campaign, and by virtue of just being who you are and participating in the day-to-day and week-to-week activities and so forth. So in other words, people get to know you, but you don't campaign consciously for a position. People will, it's sort of like what it says in the Bible, ye shall know them by their fruits. Well, hey, this person has shown over the years, great integrity and honesty and wanting to help people. And so I think this person should be on that council. So now you're sitting at, go ahead.
It's really important because when we're looking at it and we're looking at the conversation of government and community and everything in the conversation with the Akasha, the thing is that we look at it, and it's understandable because people on our world need the inspiration, the push, the motivation to take an action to make those kind of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Now, and really depending, because we're not going to speak specifically about this situation that we're in now,
mm-hmm.
but there's sometimes when you actually can see what a person has accomplished, or if they're in your neighboring area, you can know what they have accomplished,
mm-hmm.
and you can decide if you want that person to be a guide instead of saying the name of the position they're in.
Right, exactly.
You want them to guide and help. Now, when we're looking at, like you said, the faith, and when we're looking at the higher frequencies of what government and community could be, it could be where everybody can obviously see the difficulties that individuals or groups or areas are having and come together to find a way to help.
Exactly.
To resolve things. Not because we live in a capitalist society, but there's other countries who do it in other ways. It's still not in the place where there really is pure service. There's kind of like always, even though it makes me feel when I say this, I feel a little jaded, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's always a payback somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the relationships, as opposed to it being of service, so that when we look at things in communities, there's still communities, especially Native American communities, that don't have internet service, that don't have water, all sorts of different things. And we've known it for years.
Mm-hmm.
Why is not anything happening there?
Yeah.
Because the service isn't being brought forward in a way that recognizes, like we talked before about the ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
You help this community. They help all the other communities around it. We have a greater community in our world. And when we're connecting with the Akasha and looking at those energies there, then they're fully aware of how many different ways we can communicate, we can serve, we can govern, and we can shift.
Well, these 9 that are a part of this council, when they go to address a situation that has been put before the council, each person can put forth what they see as a solution. But here's the transformative part of this. Once that person has, metaphorically speaking, placed their idea on the table,
Mm-hmm.
it no longer belongs to them as an individual. It belongs to the body of 9 to consider.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay? So there's no ego involved.
Right.
And then when they decide to vote on one of the solutions, it could be 9-0, 8-1, etc. But here's the kicker. You might vote and be in the minority. However, by virtue of choosing, because you do choose to be a part of the body, just because they want you doesn't necessarily mean you have to. So by virtue of choosing to be a part of that body, you agree that if you are part of the minority vote, following the vote, you agree to go along with the majority.
Interesting way of looking. It's an interesting way of looking at things because the majority would probably have to say anyway, and what it's having a conversation about is that you still are part of that wholeness.
Exactly.
And when we're looking at the conversations about government with the Akasha, it is very interesting that that they're also saying that in civilizations beyond the Earth, there is a consensus government, which is what you're talking about.
That exactly right. So the needs and sorry, folks. To quote a Star Trek phrase, the needs of the one who is asking for a solution, who came to the council to seek help, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the few or the many. But in the case of the individual on the council who votes, who places their ideas on the table and then votes and winds up in the minority, the needs of the many, the community, outweigh the needs of the few or the one. So it kind of works both ways. It's sort of a double-edged sword of sorts.
Well, when they're looking at consensus government, there are things that they would agree to. That is a whole. It's a whole thing that we would think of it as obvious. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to be fed. Obvious.
Yeah.
It's not like we can't do that on our planet. We can. Everyone needs clothes. We can do that on the planet. My goodness, you don't know how many things, how many pieces of clothing are out there that don't get to other people. I mean, we have, all of these different things. So when we're looking at that, one of the things that's so brilliant about them sharing this with us, and they also feel that each being would be educated so that nobody falls through the cracks.
Yes.
And everybody is expected to flourish in their own way. And so they would connect and make agreements that bring everything to a higher level. And it's really important because we could look at it, and no matter what your philosophy about anything in particular, there's very few people, I believe, on this planet would say, ha, you don't deserve to eat. I don't believe that about humanity. I don't believe that people would be happy that people can't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
They may have different philosophies on how you do it, and
Sure.
whether you're a good person because you're working or not working or whatever, that doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking for, in this conversation that we're having, we're really looking for the divine exploration of what are the higher frequencies, what are the higher ways of knowing. And see, the Akashic, they know this. They can see different, what do we call them, governments or communities or whatever we want to say. They know that this can all come together, and it can come together in a beautiful collaboration of people.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
absolutely.
we don't all want to do the same thing anyway.
No, absolutely not. I mean, what a boring place that would be.
Well, and like I would be really happy channeling, being creative, everything else. Please don't make me an engineer.
Exactly.
It's like, nope, sorry, don't want to measure things.
I'll also give you. I love it. I'll also give you another example. Almost sort of opposite perspectives. There was a point. I was only with the Baha'i faith officially for a year and a half, and I felt an inconsistency within myself. I could not take that final step to enter into 100% commitment. And when I talked with the people that I had gone to, they have these wonderful little, they call them firesides, where you go to someone's home and we talk about the principles, the philosophy, the writings, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And the woman told me over the phone, she says, no problem. You're welcome back anytime. We will remove your name from our list. Now, contrast that with my having written a letter requesting that my name be removed from the rolls of Roman Catholicism through the St. Agnes Church in Phoenix, Arizona, where I go into the rectory, I hand the letter to this woman telling her what it is that I want to do, and her response was, "We'll put it in your file." And I said, "You and the FBI both have a file on me? Isn't that fascinating?" I did chuckle, because it was funny that, oh, you're going to put it in my, you're not going to honor my request. You're going to put it in my file. Okay, fine.
I love it.
So the interesting,
Please take away my file. Oh, thank you for the letter. We'll put it in your file.
exactly. So there's the interesting contrast between the two philosophies. And again, I have no ill will towards the church, the Catholic Church. That's their policy and procedures.
All of the things that we're talking about, though, we want to really have a bigger vision, but we know so many details of what different organizations do. And I'll just say it this way: for whatever reason they do it, they consider it for their own survival. They're putting it together, they're having it this way, they have their philosophy, they have their rules, everything else for their survival. So that this organization, whatever it is, doesn't fall by the wayside. And doesn't disconnect, and people go their own way and they don't come back and all that other stuff. That's why they have these things. Now, we're in a completely different place, and when you look at the Akashic Records and you look at the keepers, they're looking at so many things that we can't even fathom. We can't fathom how. We're just looking at all of the things that people know that if they create a polarity, then you're going to push people in one direction or the other, and they're going to get, let's just say, they'll get more agitated.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll do reaction as opposed to consideration.
Yeah.
And we have that all over our world. It's not just happening here in the U.S., but it's happening everywhere. Now, if we're looking at a higher level of this, and we're not looking at payback, and we're not looking at, like, manipulating something so you quote-unquote win, or you don't lose out because you haven't evolved. There's so many things that we can create in the world. We are creating them, but they are not bigger than the other systems.
Yeah.
So we have systems to give people food that don't have food, but those are not global systems. Those are not reaching out in areas that are, beyond or whatever. And having the compassion and connection with people as humanity, it heals people.
Mm-hmm.
It just does. And right now, it's not the loudest conversation. That's what I'm going to say. The thing is, frequency-wise, we're in big change, which is why some of these other things are so loud. It's because they don't want you to know how much of an evolution we're in.
Yeah. And I find that interesting, too, because the perception is that these loud ones over here are in the majority. But the reality is, if you are actually to take count, they're not. They're being loud so they can be perceived as being in the majority, when in fact they're on the fringe.
Well, and the other thing is, so I'm just going to say it this way just for fun, right? They happen to be able to afford the biggest microphones and the loudest speakers.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they filled the auditorium.
This is true.
It just means that they got the loudest, microphones and speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So they're overriding other conversations.
Right.
And the thing is that most people, now some people have just, and it's understandable, they just don't have the energy to even participate in this because it's exhausting. And then there's other people who's like, hey, listen, I'm not giving up just because somebody's louder than I am.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not doing that. And so we have the opportunity, and wherever you and I know, we're not just talking about the U.S. We're talking about our global world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the thing is, most of the people on this planet are not really happy to listen to those loudspeakers.
Well,
they want to be able to, you know, serve their community, enjoy their life.
Yeah.
And the majority of the people on this planet actually do good.
Yeah.
They do good. They help each other.
But
and in this energy that we're moving into right now, these frequencies and connecting with the Akashic records, it allows you also, if you're looking at a more universal view of things,
mm-hmm.
then you're going into a bigger place. So that certain cultures we speak about, because you're very connected with the Native community, then we can look at certain things where people recognize that the land is alive and it feeds us.
Yes.
And it's sacred.
Yes.
And that plants are sacred, and they're just as sacred as the animals or anything else. And there isn't really a hierarchy. Even if we humans think we're the hierarchy, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So we can look at all of these different things and recognize that they're all sacred, and we're all sacred. And the whole system can be fed and supported as opposed to other things.
Yeah, I get that. I really do. And that's there's another element too in regards to the minority of loud voices, is that it does take a lot of energy to do that. But I have also known that eventually they get exhausted. You cannot continue to do that without expending great amounts of energy. And they're not tapping into the universal energy. They're trying to use their own, or as energy vampires would do, of other people. And eventually they become quiet through a myriad of different reasons, okay?
Right.
And there's a certain element of patience. And again, we're talking about this planet. There's a certain element of patience that we need to exercise, saying, okay, I will continue to speak, but I also know that the volume is going to come down. It has to. It's just because it's not sustainable. And then our voices can rise, not to necessarily the volume. We don't need to yell. We don't need to have the loudest. We just need to make sure that we're getting our voices heard, our message out, if you will, and for the betterment of all, as well as self. It's the combination.
And the thing is, on our world, that actually can be done.
Mm-hmm.
So some people would say that is, it's like you're high. No way that can happen,
mm-hmm.
right? But really it can be, simply because there are so many brilliant people on this planet. There are so many brilliant people who are really caring, who want to help, and the resources on this planet, even though some people may have conversations that they're limited, they're actually not.
They're not. No, they're not. They're not
limited.
Actually
not. Now, they may have to move around.
Mm-hmm.
Weather changes. People change. They want to go different places, etc. But that doesn't mean that there isn't enough. And with our own brilliance and creativity, we can create much more.
Yeah. Plus the fact...
And the other thing... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, plus the fact not everybody wants the same thing.
No. That's why I told you I don't want to be an engineer. I'm not dissing it. My brain won't go there.
Exactly.
I can have the whole vision of what is going to be created and what would be really good, but do the math, do the mechanics, but don't think.
Yeah, exactly.
Be somebody better.
Well, I've said
but the thing is, in all of it, when we're looking at the Akashic records, see, they have an understanding, and they not only have an understanding, but they contain an understanding. They hold this understanding sacred. They explore it. They're looking at all of these different things, so it's not just your past life and all the different things that you've grown up with and your choices in life, but they have an understanding that the world, the global system, can have a harmony, that there can be understanding between it. Whether they believe the same things or not is not as important as what is being able to grow and fulfill and support. And we can also connect, the Akasha connects with that. They, if we look at it like a whole crazy multidimensional database, they have understanding of all of the different communities and governments and situations and educational organizations. I mean, that's the way we would describe it. Other beings and other civilizations that aren't on this planet might not describe it in that way.
Yeah.
And these resonate, and sometimes they combine, and sometimes they stand on their own, and it's really quite amazing.
We're talking with Lumari. Lumari.com is the website. We hope that you'll get a copy of the Akashic Records. Akashic Records is the actual title of the book. We hope that you'll go there through Lumari's website or go to Amazon.com and order it that way. It is a conversation we've been having for the last few weeks and will continue until we wrap up the book. And this particular chapter and this conversation today it fascinates me because it opens the door to so many possibilities. I think what comes to mind is the economics of our world, okay? And every civilization throughout the planet in this day and time is using a different economic system. Even though we hear the word global economy, we hear that phrase. Still, on a more local level, whether it be country or state or what have you, city, every community and so forth has a slightly different view of what their, and again, using the word economy should be. Then you step off the planet and you start going into the other realms we've been discussing, and it isn't even an issue because it's not at the top of the list. We're the planet that made it at the top of the list for all kinds of different reasons. But there are others on other planets and in other realms, other dimensions. That is not a priority.
Well, it's true, and the thing that is the thing that we have the opportunity. So, and we have this opportunity on a personal level, on a global level, on a cosmic level, and that is recognizing where things come together and where you can make positive change that isn't about you, but is comfortable for you to do. And I say it's comfortable for you to do because we're not talking about you sacrificing your well-being and doing something that sounds really good in the moment. Because that also, and it's funny because I used to have, as you know, I've had plenty of crazy philosophical conversations with my family when I was a kid. I was just like that. And I looked at it and I kept on, my father would laugh at me because I'd say, there's no such thing as sacrifice. Don't sacrifice. Create a sacrament. Make it sacred. Don't hurt yourself in order to make it sacred. This is me, the 10-year-old, right? It's like we want to be able to participate and give and look at it like it's sacred. So if we're looking at economy, there are so many things that we can do to create the positive change that we want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And, the conversations about, oh, there's these violent people and these things are going on and these things are going on. Well, why do you think that is? And yes, there might be like a 0.0000001% of people who just can't control their violence. But basically, it's because they're not being supported by our planet. What do you do if you don't have food? What if you do if you can't feed your kids? Well, the bad choice is what happens. The good choice is how do we connect with the Akashic records, connect with the spirit of our beings, and look at that and go, we can change this. We can contribute in ways that bring us joy and bring positive change to our world without harming ourselves or anybody else.
Yeah.
That's the sacred community, the sacred consensus of a government, a sacred government, beyond what we're talking about on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
beyond the limitations of different philosophies and ideas, because you can have all of those, but that doesn't mean you can't communicate and collaborate. It happens all the time on this planet where different religious organizations, different communities come together to do something good.
Yeah.
And they're not worried about the other little things that are there. And we're in a place right now where we definitely are connecting and moving in those higher realms. Or at least if you're not there yet, you have opportunities to be open to explore that. And that's why you and I are having these conversations.
Exactly. Exactly right. To me, the discussion of the other realms of existence, as well as the other civilizations on other planets in the universe. Now, I half jokingly say if only the mothership would come and carry me away, I'd go. Maybe I would come back, okay. Because I remember when we went to Ireland for the second time, we landed in Shannon, and I said, I'm not going back. We got 2 weeks here, but I'm not going back. Well, of course, I came back. Because I just loved being there. And it's one of those aspects that I find fascinating, in that I would love to have that experience of being somewhere else and experiencing something different, because it almost is ranking right up there with the philosophical Christian story of the end. They've been talking about it for 2,000 years, and it bores me to death.
Well, there is no end, so don't worry about it.
Well, exactly. That's my point. But it's like...
No, there is no end. There's a whole other thing going on, but there is no end.
Yeah.
There may be things that we call transitions, but beyond that...
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is also something that you can vibrationally connect with those other... I'll just call them realities for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can vibrationally connect with them.
Exactly.
You can tune in on those higher vibrations. And the thing is, when we're looking at our world right now and the change that is happening spiritually and vibrationally to our planet and the people on it, is that it is spiritually enlightening. And more people are tuning into that. And you might be able to see it as a journey to another world, or another world within yourself, or another world in the universe of all. And we have access to that.
Yeah.
Seriously,
yeah, we do.
Everybody.
Yeah. And it doesn't take much to tap in. I mean, we've talked about that before. And that's something that you need to keep in mind, that it is possible. So, as we are fast approaching the end of this particular program, this session, this edition, if you will, this chapter of the Akashic Records. What would be, because I kind of feel there is one, the message that you would want to impart in, let's just say, the next couple of minutes?
Thank you, Richard. That's beautiful. I would like to say, first, be optimistic, because there's more there than we can actually even imagine. And no matter how big our imagination is, since we're talking about the Akashic Records today, the Akashic Records is vast. And we and you and everybody listening can create the change in their own lives to feel that beautiful spirit in their own being and help wherever they feel moved to help. And understand that all of us together, we really are way more aware and conscious than we know. And spirit and the higher vibrations are here for all of us. Mm. And the most important thing is really to take a breath and listen.
Yep. That's what we need to do. We need to stop, take that breath, and tune in and listen. That's why we always talk here on the program about listening to that still small voice.
Yeah.
Taking the time. It doesn't take much time. I have to say that when I'm out, and thankfully our weather here has started to turn a little bit, where I can go outside and work, and it's nice and cool, and there's a slight breeze, which makes it even cooler. Now, I'm only out there for about a half hour. I haven't been outside working much in the last few months, so I've got to build up my stamina again. So I'm only out there for about a half hour, but that is a glorious half hour that I'm able to be out there, feel the breeze, the coolness of the air, even hearing the birds in the trees, even in the evening as the sun is going down. And it is just, it's spectacular. It really is.
And we have to do that. So both you and me, we have a message for everybody, and take the time. It can be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, we're not saying you need to take 3 days in silence.
Mm-mm.
Although you might like to, but we're not saying that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Just be able to be in that space of listening, and even if you don't hear any messages, that's okay too.
Yeah.
And you know, we're just sending blessings to everybody.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing.
Well, Lumari, thank you again. I'm looking forward to next Wednesday when we get together again to continue our conversation about the Akashic Records. And it is available through lumari.com, and we'll look forward to talking with you then.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Blessings.
And thank you, folks, for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Until my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.